Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be working a little bit more energy into pelvic floor. We're going to start with some turtle breath to just kind of get that neurology energy moving down into the pelvic floor, then working a good amount of hip mobility related to the pelvic floor. We're going to start with that turtle breath, and I want to kind of do our best to kind of continue to use turtle breath throughout the class. And it's just simply bringing neurology to that pelvic floor. I'm not looking at this as fixing anything. We're not trying to solve problems. The pelvic floor tends to get short and tight, which impacts our breathing, because when we breathe, our diaphragm is inversely related to the pelvic floor. As the diaphragm contracts, our internal organs shift down. Pelvic floor needs to be able to lengthen in order to absorb the organs. And then as we exhale, pelvic floor contracts as the diaphragm relaxes. And if our pelvic floor is staying tight and tense in order to support for instability in the hips, knees, or the feet, then the pelvic floor is not going to be able to dynamically stretch to absorb those organs, which is then going to put restraints into our breath and create a lot of stiffness in the hips and in the low back. So I simply want to start, work on bringing some energy of length into that pelvic floor region, and then mobilize the hips, mobilize the spine, and get some good solid glute activation to support it all. So with all that, let's get started. So we're going to start on our back using a chair. I want to have the hips kind of nice and close to the front of that chair. Feet are resting on the chair. We're going to keep the heels and the feet touching together. The ball of the foot and the heel are touching, but the knees are going to be about shoulder width apart. We're kind of in this nice little froggy position. Feet together, knees apart, shoulder width. From here, we're going to make big C shapes with our hands. Hands are going to go below the rib cage, above the hip bone, in that nice meaty section of the abdominal wall. Thumbs are going in the rear, and I want to see if we can palpate or touch a little bit of the low back musculature. Index fingers are wrapping around the front to get a little bit of the abdominal musculature on the belly, and the palms are pressing into the side body. Now from here, I kind of want to imagine that our abdominal wall is a balloon, or we're a crocodile, and we're going to inhale in through our nose, and as we inhale, I want to blow up that abdominal wall like a balloon. We're trying to get it to expand in all directions. So nice, slow inhale, and I want to think about a 4 to 5 second slow count, both in and out. Nice, slow inhale. See if you can feel the abdominal wall pushing forward into the index fingers, back into the thumbs. I want to feel that low back expanding out and away and out into through the sides into the palms of your hands. As you exhale, allow your hands to clench down lightly in order to feel that resistance for your next inhale. We'll get a good 5 to 6 breaths, and with each inhale, we're trying to see if we can expand the balloon a little bit wider. As we get to our 5th, 6th breath, we're going to take our hands off our belly and we're going to bring our hands to our knees. I want to push forward into the knees, pushing the knees away. At the same time, we're pulling the knees into the hands. I want to keep the elbows active and straight, so I don't want to be bent elbow here. So we got nice solid press. As we're actively pulling, this is going to create some abdominal pressure, some tension in the core. Make sure that the head and the shoulders are soft and relaxed on the floor. If you find that your head and shoulders are rising up, then it's okay to put some blankets or bolsters underneath your head so that you're able to let them soften down. From here, we're going to do the exact same breath. Inhale into that crocodile breath, but now we're going to bring it into what I call turtle breath. So as you inhale, filling up that abdominal wall, when you exhale, we're going to exhale and do a light Kegel. Hold your pee, hold your poo as you exhale. And on your next inhale, we're going to bring that inhale breath down the spine and feel it fill up the bowl of the pelvis, pushing that Kegel out and away. As you exhale, we're doing a light Kegel. And as we inhale, we're allowing that inhale breath to release that Kegel naturally and feel it expand. You might feel stretch, you might not, but I want to feel that the energy of that breath moving down into that pelvic floor, the bowl of the pelvis, and feel it expanding down towards the feet. Again, this is just getting that energy and playing with that relationship between the diaphragm contracting, pelvic floor lengthens on our inhale. On our exhale, pelvic floor contracts as the diaphragm lengthens. Again, we'll get 5 to 6 breaths. And then we're going to move our chair out of the way. And we can keep it close by because we're going to come back to it at the very end of the class, and we're going to do another round of our breath work. Now I want to get into some figure four. So we're going to take one ankle, we're going to place it on the knee, making a figure four position with the other leg. And I want to continue with that same breath. We're still inhaling into the crocodile breath. Continue to feel that breath move down into the pelvic floor. You don't necessarily have to keep up with the Kegel, but every once in a while, just to feel that activation and length through the pelvic floor, come back and kind of bring it in, play with it a little bit. From here, we're going to do a little bit of hip mobility. So on our inhale, I'm bringing my knee up towards my head. On the exhale, I'm reaching my knee to the wall towards my feet. And I'm going nice and slow, and I want to feel this kind of deep in the hip socket. And I want to be very light, not painful. If this is painful on the knees or painful on the hips, then I would say take a break on this one and schedule consultation so we can deal with those pain issues. We're going to do 5 up to 10 reps. Once we finish with one leg, kind of get a good feel for how far does that knee travel, especially as we reach towards the wall at our feet. And then we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. Inhale, letting the knee come to the head. Exhale, reaching that knee towards the wall at our feet. Notice if one hip feels tighter, more restricted than the other hip. I don't want to be forceful with it, which is why we're going slow and we're working at the speed of our breath. Again, which should be kind of like somewhere between a 3 and 5 second count, both on the inhale and on the exhale. I don't want to give you exact numbers because I want you to find what feels like a natural rhythm for your breath. But we are going with a nice slow breath. Once we match that side, we're going to come back to the first side again. Want to actively reach that knee towards the wall, and I'm going to keep that knee actively reached towards the wall. So we're creating a little tension in the front hip. From here, we're going to lift our foot off the floor and pull that knee into our chest as we exhale. Inhale, we can let our foot back to the floor. Exhale, we're pulling that knee into the chest. As I'm doing this, I'm maintaining light tension, reaching my opposite knee towards that wall. So I have one knee reaching away as the other knee is pulling in towards the chest. We should feel that mobilize a little bit into that posterior area of the glutes, back of the hip. Again, 5 to 10 reps, going nice and slow, and then we can switch, do the same thing on the other side. Again, reaching that knee towards the wall at your feet, and then opposite knee is lifting, pulling into the chest, nice and slow as we bring that foot back to the floor. Exhale as we lift. Again, opposite knee is reaching away as our knee with the foot on the floor is pulling into the chest. I want to avoid getting rushed on this. If you feel your body wanting to rush it, slow down your breath a little bit. Take a little longer to get a good inhale. Take a little longer to take a nice exhale. I'm less concerned about how far you go, and I'm more concerned with it being smooth and comfortable. Even if it's a small range of motion, I want to stay light and slow through whatever that range of motion is. Again, once we even out on both sides, we're going to come back to the first side again. Now, I still want to be actively reaching that bent knee towards the wall, but now we're going to allow our entire hip to roll. And I'm letting it roll. In fact, let's go ahead and bring arms out to the side with the palms up so that we kind of have our nice imprint in a bed of sand through our shoulders. I want to feel those shoulders grounded to the floor. Nice inhale into our crocodile breath. As we exhale, we're letting the hip roll as if we're trying to place that foot flat on the floor, but I only want to go as far as we can go without the shoulder peeling up off the floor. I don't want to lose our imprint in the sand. Inhale brings the hip back. Exhale, slowly seeing how far can we roll that hip. I'm less concerned with touching the floor. If you don't touch the floor, it's not a big deal. I want to make sure you're not going into pain in the back, the hip, or with the knee. Again, we're actively keeping that knee reaching to the wall at our feet as we are rolling our hip away and bringing it back. Once we get 5 to 10 reps on that side, we're going to switch, do the same thing on the other side. Actively reach that knee away. Nice inhale breath. Exhale, nice slow roll. Go easy on the first one. See how it feels on the hip in the back. Inhale as we come back up. Again, exhale, we're only rolling as far as we can keep both shoulders grounded to the floor. Notice if there's a difference in how one side hip feels compared to the other side hip. With these movements, differences in one hip, stiffness, tightness, and restriction that restrict movement on one side more so than the other are going to be important things to pay attention to, because these are areas that we want to work on and get better at. See if we can bring a little bit more balance between the sides. We're going to switch back to the other side, and now we're going to allow that leg to slide, the top leg to slide down so that our calf, or midway down the shank of our lower leg, is on the knee. So instead of the ankle being on the knee, we're sliding down so it's midway on the calf. We're going to lift that foot off the floor and pull the knee into the chest. As we do so, taking our opposite side hand and placing it across that knee, we're going to pull
the knee towards the chest, pulling it straight into the chest. At the same time, we can pull our knee across towards our opposite shoulder. This is going to get a little bit of a stretch deeper in the back of that hip, getting into more of that piriformis region. So I'm pulling in with one knee. At the same time, I'm pulling across towards my opposite shoulder to feel that tension on the exhale. Inhale, I can let it soften. The foot doesn't need to go all the way to the floor. We can just ease it out. Pull both knee and hand at the same time. This is creating a little bit of rotation as we're drawing that knee in order to get deeper into that hip. Once we do 5 to 10 on that side, we're going to switch to the other side. Again, let that leg slide so it's halfway down the shank of the lower leg. Pulling that knee towards the chest, opposite hand across the top of the knee. So as we pull with our knee, we're also pulling towards our opposite shoulder. Inhale as we go forward. Exhale as we pull in. Notice if one hip feels tighter here. That area of the tightness in that area of the piriformis can be can lead to some impingement on the sciatic nerve as it exits the hip. That can create all kinds of issues down the leg, from motor control to sensory, stabbing pain, numbness, inability to control the foot. Getting some light mobilization can get some ease out of that, out of those impingements. All right, we're going to now slowly move to our quadruped position, coming to hands and knees. Want to spread the hands nice and wide, ground the palms, extend the elbows fully without locking, and we're going to tuck the back toes, especially the big toe. Going to get a nice inhale into our belly, and we're going to start with some light pelvic tilts. So inhale through the belly, feel that belly move down towards the floor. As the pelvis tilts to the floor, we're going to get a little bit of a sway in our low back. On our exhale, we're drawing our navel into the spine as we scoop the pelvis. I only want to mobilize through the low back, so we're not getting into a big cat position. I don't want that movement coming all the way up into the shoulders just yet. Inhale, feel that belly tilt to the floor. Exhale, draw the navel in as you scoop. Can you feel some mobilization, some stretch through that low back area? Want to make sure that we are avoiding pain or pinch. So I want to stay as small as it needs to be in order to not be painful or uncomfortable. And with each one, we're seeing, can we get a little bit more access without moving into pain? Simply by getting some movement in here, after 3 to 5 reps, can we get a little bit more space with that pelvic tilt? On the next inhale, as we inhale, I kind of want to stay in this sway back position. And now we're going to rock back and get a little bit of load into the balls of the big toe. Inhale, we're going to rock forward. Exhale, we're rocking back, feeling the weight of our hips load the big toe joint. I want to see how much extension do we have in the right side and left side big toe. Inhale brings us forward. Exhale, sinking hips back to the heels. As we sink back, I want you to imagine you're sticking your tail up towards the ceiling. So we're continuing to keep that sway back, tail sticks up as we sink weight of our hips towards our heels. Can you feel that load on the ball of the big toe and starting to stretch into the arches of the feet. How does that right big toe feel compared to the left big toe? Is one side stiffer, achier, more restricted? Is it painful? If it's painful, then I want you to back off a little bit. Once we get 5 to 10, we're going to turn our heels all the way out and see if we can tuck underneath to all the way through the pinky toes. And we're going to do the exact same thing. Inhale forward, exhale as we stick that tail up, feeling the weight of our hips sink to heels. Inhale brings us back forward. Exhale, nice sink hips to heels. Again, how does this feel right side compared to left side? Does one foot feel stiffer, tighter, achier than the other? Once we hit 5 to 10, we'll let the feet, we're going to stay tucked under, but I'm going to bring the heels back to being parallel, so the heels are going straight up to the ceiling, and we're lightly tucked underneath at the big toe joint. And we're going to come back to our pelvic tilts. Inhale, letting that pelvis tilt to the floor. Exhale, nice scoop. Now you might notice that by mobilizing the feet a little bit, that you have a little bit more access to pelvic tilt. You can get a little bit more scoop, or you're able to tilt towards the floor just a little bit more. And now we're going to take that into our spinal wave. So as you exhale and scoop, I want to continue to let that movement move up the spine. As it gets up to the shoulders, we're pressing through the hands. We're continuing to let it move over the top of the head to this point where we're trying to touch our tailbone to our forehead at this imaginary point. So I'm actively scooping. I'm actively reaching my forehead down. Can you feel your core kind of light up on fire? On the inhale, pelvis tilts down to the floor and it pulls each vertebrae one at a time to the floor. As it gets to the chest, the sternum reaches down to the floor and the head comes up last. Exhale, scoop, and feel that wave move up the spine. Inhale, tilts to the floor. Feel that wave move up to the head. I want to go slow and see if you can feel each vertebrae moving one at a time. I want to avoid head and pelvis moving together. Can you create a wave that starts at the tailbone and ends at the top of your head? After 5 to 10, we're going to come back to our starting point. Now I want to get a little bit of movement into the shoulder, so we're going to bring our hands forward. I want to bring them as far forward as feels comfortable on the shoulders. If you have shoulder pain, then I want to stay back so that we don't expose that pain. From here, we're going to do a little bit more into our pelvic tilt work. So nice inhale, let that pelvis tilt to the floor so we get a big sway in our back. Exhale as you scoop. See if you can feel that little bit of rounding into the low back. As you inhale, pelvis tilts to the floor. Note how the rib cage also drops and opens up to the floor. As you exhale and scoop, notice how that rib cage is drawing back up and your core is getting tight and tense. I want to feel that scoop and that drawing in and that active core As we get into the next part where we reach our sternum down to the floor as we downwardly press into our hands. So we're going to inhale at the top, belly's opened up, big sway in the back. And as we exhale and scoop, we're reaching sternum down to the floor. So that rib cage is drawing up and in as we scoop. The core gets more engaged, and that's going to elicit a little bit more load and stretch into the shoulders. Inhale, we're rocking back up, allowing that pelvis that belly to open up. Exhale, feel that scoop as you draw that navel in, feel that rib cage. Move towards your pelvis. I don't want it to move towards the floor. Can you feel that stretch at the armpit area on both shoulders? Is it greater on one shoulder than it is on the other shoulder? Now, as we get 5 to 10 reps, on the next one, as we drop to the floor, I want to drop into light tension, not massive tension. Light tension, again, my hands are downwardly pressed lightly into the floor. And I want to keep those hands at spread as wide as possible. And we're going to roll a thumb up towards the ceiling and palm towards the ceiling, basically doing like a little bowl of soup. Bring that hand back down, and then we're going to go to the other side. I want to be really light and slow to make sure that this is not painful. Trying to keep the elbows actively straight and the hand as wide and spread as possible. As we roll to that pinky side and then back to the thumb, we can also roll over the thumb side, moving to the back of the palm, and do the same thing on the other side, going back and forth. Simply playing with that rotation through the long arm bone, but maintaining some light tension connected to the floor. And we'll come out of that position. And we're now going to shift into our V-sit. So getting a nice wide split V-sit, I want to actively pull the tops of the feet back towards the shins, actively reach the knees down to the floor. That should engage the quads, and that's going to get us some action deep into the hip sockets. Hands come down to the floor behind the hips, and we're grounding down into the floor. I want to spiral those elbow pits out and away so that we feel, I don't want shoulders rounded forward. We're rotating out and away so that you feel the shoulder blades open up and drop down towards the floor, which will help open up the chest, lifting the sternum up towards the ceiling. We want to be nice and tall through our spine. From here, we're going to focus on kneecaps. We're rotating kneecaps out as we exhale, as if you're trying to touch the floor on the outside of the legs. We're inhaling as we come to the center. We're exhaling as we roll those kneecaps internal, like you're trying to touch the floor on the inside. I'm not paying attention so much to the feet other than holding those feet, pulling them back, trying to touch the shins. Knees are actively reaching down at the same time. Exhale as you spiral out and away. Inhale to center. Exhale as you spiral in. Notice on this one, how much range of motion do you have on the right side compared to the left side? And there's two things we're looking at. One is how much range of motion do you have on your external spiral, rolling out? What's the difference on the right side compared to the left side? Does one go farther than the other? The other one we're looking at is internal. How far internal do they both go? Does one go further than the other?
Those are going to be important things to pay attention to, because that difference in internal to external rotation on one side compared to the other is going to impact our gait mechanics. And so I want to take note of these. Where there is an imbalance in mobility are areas that we want to feed some mobility work on a regular basis in order to bring that balance back. We want to do it with mobility and stability. So we don't want to do mobility isolated. We also want to do movements that promote stability as well, which is generally what we're doing now. Any movement that is in gravity, that is self-directed. I'm not doing it passively. I'm not using a rope or a strap or having somebody else mobilize me. Active movement in gravity, we're working neurology in order to mobilize these joints, so we are bringing a little bit of neurological stability with our mobility. All right, now we're going to start to get a little bit of flossing through our ankles. So as you roll out and away, we're going to point the toes and then internally spiral as we pull those toes back. Now I want to be cautious. If you're prone to like Charlie horses cramps, note if there's a little bit of spasm action in the arch of the feet. If so, then this is an important movement to work on, but I want to do it just shallow enough that you feel good mobility, but not so deep that you feel that Charlie horse or spasm. I don't want to activate that. If you're able to, without that spasm, we can start to add a little bit more through the feet. As you point, you can see, are you able to flex the toes as you spiral in? Are you able to open the toes and spread them wide as you pull back and spiral out? We are really kind of playing with the fascia at this point. Big fascial movements, basically trying to spread and open up fascial channels from the foot all the way up into the hip. Once we get 5 to 10 in one direction, we're going to reverse directions. So now we're moving in, flex the toes as we extend out, rolling out, opening the toes, spreading them wide as we pull and rotate in. I like to think of this, to me, this feels like a nice big flossing action, especially around the ankles. Once we get 5 to 10 in both directions, we're going to stay in our V-sit, still actively pulling those toes, the top of the foot back, actively reaching the knee down. We're going to take our hands off the floor if we can, and we're now going to get into some folds. So it's going to be a nice inhale. On the exhale, we're seeing how far can we go with both hands evenly. Inhale brings us all the way back up. Exhale. Nice, slow reach. Inhale, bringing it back. This is where I like to imagine my hands are the wave moving up a beach and then receding back down. With each one, I don't want to force it, but I want to see if I can get a little further on that exhale. Inhale, bringing it all the way back in. And just to kind of re-cue in that breath, we're still breathing out through that crocodile breath. As you exhale, every once in a while, add a light kegel so that on your inhale, you're not just expanding out, you're also expanding down into that pelvic floor. As you start feeling a little more opened up on this, we can start to deviate off center. We can start going a little bit side to side. Nice exhale, coming back up, and then doing the same thing to the other side. Now, as we start going side to side, we're really going to notice any imbalance or differences right side to left side. Are you able to reach a little further to the right side than you are to the left? Do you feel more stretch or length through one hamstring than you do on the other? Or do you feel it more in the adductors? And it can be deep in that hip. And we can keep moving side to side. We can start reaching all the way out towards the heels. We can even go beyond the heels. I want to think explore. How much room do I have to explore from this V-sit position? Again, feet are still actively pulling. I'm wide, knees are moving down. I'm seeing how well can I mobilize this upper part of my body related to maintaining position in the lower body. And where does that elicit interesting, differences one side to the other? Again, back of the hamstrings, inside of the thighs are going to be some of the, and low back would be another area to pay attention to. My left side hip here, as I move away, is kind of my primary sticky point. Everything else, for the most part, feels relatively even. All right, now we're going to shift into our frog position. So we're coming back up to hands and knees, but I want the knees to open up as wide as comfortable. Feet are staying in close and tight, similar to what we did on the chair with our turtle breath. Palms are nice and grounded. I want to start with the toes kind of tucked underneath. We're going to inhale as we're forward, exhale as we sink our hips back to heels. As we sink our hips back to heels, I want to imagine we're sticking that tail lightly up towards the ceiling. I don't want to let our pelvis scoop underneath. Keep that pelvis actively lifted up, or that tailbone kind of pointing up a little bit. As we exhale, inhale, rocking forward. And we can bring back that turtle breath into this position. Inhale, light Kegel as you rock forward. Exhale, light Kegel. Let me get that one straight real quick for you. I'm inhaling as I'm allowing that pelvis to length. And I think I want to reverse my breath on this one a little bit just to play with something different. So I want to exhale as we're rocking forward. And I want to inhale as we sink our hips into our heels. That's going to help bring some expansion into that pelvic bowl. So exhale, light Kegel as you rock forward. Inhale, allow that breath to move into the pelvic floor, creating some length as you rock back. If this feels good, you're able to get good mobility, you feel like you can get a little more, we can drop down to our elbows and doing the same thing. Again, exhale, rocks forward. Inhale, rocks back. That may feel a little counterintuitive compared to some of the things we've been doing, but I really want to work on seeing if we can get that length into that pelvic floor area. Now we're going to come back up to hands. I want to get to a point where we're finding light tension, not heavy tension, and we're going to untuck our toes. And from here, we're going to do a little bit of a light lift of the ankles. So I want to see just lightly lifting an ankle up towards the ceiling. This is going to get some mobility deep into that hip socket. Inhale as we let that leg down. Exhale as we go to the other side. Now, as we're lifting those hips, our ankle, I want to avoid big shifts in the rest of our body. I don't want to be shifting and twisting up. want to see how fixed can we remain through the shoulders as we lightly lift that ankle. That means we won't lift that ankle quite as high, but it will give us a little bit better indication of like, how high can I lift that right ankle compared to how high can I lift that left one? And does one feel tighter and more restricted than the other? I have more mobility on my right hip than I do on my left. My left feels a little harder to get up into that. I have a specific area of tension that's kind of restricting. All right, now we're going to get into our shin box position. So I'm starting out my left side shin box. My left knee is forward. My left hand is coming down outside that hip, grounding that palm. We're spiraling that elbow out and away in order to, again, get that shoulder blade to pack down and back. Nice open, tall chest. We're going to start with our hip openers. So lifting that knee lightly up towards the ceiling as we exhale. Inhale as we bring it back to the floor. We'll do 5 of these on each side. Going nice and slow with that exhale. I want to avoid shifting in the rest of the body. So I don't want to shift on my shoulder as I lift that hip up. That hand is well fixed. The weight of my body is kind of on this opposite side so that I am more free to just move that hip without getting a lot of movement elsewhere. Once we get 5, we're going to switch to the other side, doing the same thing. Now this is going to be a good, solid assessment point. Get that shoulder blade spiraled down and back, pack shoulder. Exhale as we lift. Inhale as we bring that knee back down. How high are you able to lift the right knee compared to the left knee? I was teaching this in class yesterday, and one student in the class noted how one side, she was really struggling. It was really challenging. There's her other side. The way she described it is the movement made sense, but when she came to the other side, it didn't make as much sense. It felt really hard. If that's the case, that's going to be an indication of some imbalance in the hips that we want to work on. That's going like that. It doesn't make sense is a neurological issue. It means that we aren't using those patterns in that hip as much, and so if you don't use it, you lose it principle applies to our neurology. If you don't use movement patterns, you will lose the neurology to those movement patterns. It's similar to if you play piano or play a sport and you don't practice for a while and you go back and practice, you're rusty. You don't maintain the same neurology as you did when you were practicing every single day. Once you stop practicing, that neurology starts to break down. It has to be a regular daily practice in order to maintain. So probably more than 5 on that side. We're going to come back to our other side. Again, grounded palm, spiraled elbow, tall chest. Again, I want my weight more shifted forward so that front knee stays pinned to the ground. I don't want that knee lifting because that means we're rocking back. We're now going to focus on that back hip. Inhale, we're reaching that hip down to the floor. On the exhale, we're lifting it up and reaching that hip bone forward. And we're scooping into it lightly to feel that light stretch through the front of the hip. Inhale, reaching that hip back to the floor. Exhale, reaching it forward. And I want to avoid a lot of extra movement on this. I don't want to reach with my chest or with my rib because that usually means that I'm actually not moving the hip. So less movement upper body, focusing just on, can I feel that hip come off the floor, reach forward and scoop all at the same time. Feeling that stretch here And the more I'm able to get this hip extended, the more I'm going to feel that glute tighten up and contract. I don't need to squeeze the glute. I just need to move it into the position where it naturally squeezes. Once we do 5 to 10 on that side, we're going to bring it all the way across to the other side and do the same thing. Grounded palm, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder. Inhale into that back hip. Now, this is where I have some significant restrictions in this hip. This hip is less mobile than my right hip. Exhale, we're lifting that hip up, moving it forward and scooping at the same time. With each one, we're seeing if we can get a little further in our drop. And exhale, can we lift and scoop a little bit more into it without going into pain? And I'm tired enough in this left hip, especially with everything else. I've gotten a good amount of mobility, but I'm really feeling this one now needs a little bit more work. So we're going to go back to the other side. We're going to do 3 again on this side, and then we're going to add in our reach with rotation to it. So grounded palm, spiraled elbow. Keep that weight forward so that that back hip is free to move. Inhale as we reach to the floor. Exhale, scoop. Doing this for 3 breaths. Usually the second time coming back to a movement, it's going to feel more mobile, so we want to take advantage of that. On this next one, as we reach and scoop, I want to scoop and lock in that hip. Don't lose that scoop. Now we're imagining we got a piece of bread, buddy over there that we're sharing it with. How far can we reach and extend those fingers out? Inhale, we're bringing it all the way back. Let that hip to the floor. Exhale, scoop. Lock it in and reach. I want to avoid on this one, as I'm reaching, I don't want to reach with my shoulders. So I don't want my shoulders to fold forward. I don't want to get a fold on this. I want to spiral over this arm that's on the ground. So as I scoop, I'm spiraling, seeing how far can I rotate around that arm to get those fingers, but I don't want to shift my shoulders and my head forward. Once we get 5 to 10 on this side, we're going to come back to the other side. We're going to start with our 3. Again, locked shoulder or packed shoulder, spiraled elbow, open chest. Inhale, let that hip drop. Exhale as we lift and scoop into it. This is still tighter, but the second time coming back to it feels a little bit easier to get into. I got a little bit more mobility available. On the third one, as we scoop, we're locking into that hip and we're adding in that reach. And this is the one, this movement right here is my crux. It's that combination of anterior hip and how that relates to rotation through my lumbar spine. It's so much harder on this side. And this is a kind of a chronic area. It always is out of balance, but I'm able to maintain some level of balance that keeps me functional. If I did not do these movements, I would be so incredibly twisted up, and the amount of pain that I would be in on a daily basis would be probably tenfold what I currently experience. So these movements are not about being pain-free. They're not about perfect function. It's about trying to maintain as much balance as possible in a world in which balance is pretty much an impossible thing to attain. All right, next let's get into our folds, and then we're going to get into a little bit of activation, maybe. So in folds, I want to use the shin as our square point. Shoulders are square to the shin. Nice inhale into that belly. Exhale, we're reaching both hands evenly and equally. I don't want one hand reaching further than the other. Inhale brings it all the way back up. Exhale, nice fold as we reach. Now what I want to avoid on this is as I reach, I don't want to round my back and drop my head to the floor. I want to keep the spine tall, so the head should kind of be upright. I'm seeing how far can I reach my fingers without losing the structure of my spine. The more we're able to get into that reach, the more true our assessment will be on this movement. Once we get 5 to 10 reps, we're going to switch sides and do the same thing on the other side. Again, nice shoulder square to the shin. Nice inhale, exhale as we reach both hands evenly. Inhale as we come all the way back up. How does this side feel compared to the other side? You might find that one side your body wants to round and drop more than the other side. That's going to be an indication of imbalance. So really work to hold the structure of your spine. Mobilize based on what is available. By working on this daily, it will improve little bit by little bit. Once we get 5 to 10 on that side, now we're going to start going back and forth. Going from one side into our fold. Bringing it all the way back to the other side. Going into that fold. At this point, I'm less concerned about following the shin. We get to be a little bit more exploratory. And once you get 3 up to 5 reps back and forth, we're going to start to open up that shin box. So as we get into position, let that back leg slide open a little bit as we get into that nice fold. This should elicit some different levels of mobility in both hips. I want to do a total of about 10, 15, even up to 20 reps side to side of these folds. This is one of my favorite little flows to get into. Really helps to mobilize the hips, get them nice and coated with synovial fluid, like you're just spraying some WD-40 into the Tin Man. And continuing to see how much can we start to open up that back hip as we get closer and closer to what we would consider a yoga class pigeon pose. All right, so we're going to come back to our back. And I want to get a little bit of some glute activation before we come back to our turtle breath. So we're going to let both legs go nice and straight. Then we're going to bend one knee, bringing that foot flat to the floor. And we're going to move that foot out to about 45 degrees from the midline of the body. So that foot will be lightly turned out.
I want that foot to be relatively underneath the knee. I don't want it to be extended real far out, so kind of have that foot tucked underneath a little bit. We're going to do inhale into our belly, feeling that belly lift up off the floor, getting a big sway in the back. Exhale, we're drawing our navel into our spine and scooping that pelvis. We're working one side pelvis, we're not working both. So as we exhale and scoop, we're going to drive that foot into the floor, feeling that hip lift up off the floor, and we're trying to actively scoop the tailbone to the ceiling. I want to see if we feel a nice stretch through the front of the hip. Inhale, we're letting that hip back down, filling up that belly, allowing it to lift off the floor. Exhale, navel draws into spine. Feel that belly push the spine towards the floor as you plant through that tripod nature of the foot. I want a flat foot, grounded foot, scoop that hip into it. The more we're able to scoop that tailbone up, the more you're should feel that glute start to tighten up naturally. So I'm looking for a light stretch on the front of the hip, some glute activation on the back. Let's do 10 of these. Now what I want to watch out for is that opposite leg. As I'm driving my left leg, my right leg should be completely soft. It can even be rolled out to the side a little bit. What I don't want is pressure being pushed down and lifting up both hips off the ground. This opposite leg isn't working. My left leg is pressing down, lifting and rolling that hip off the floor, pushing it up to the ceiling. That's getting into that glute. I don't want to move from my ribs. I don't want to feel that rib cage lifting up. That's why I'm drawing that breath down and in. That breath should be grounded, just the hip is lifting. With each one, see if you can press that foot flatly into the floor a little bit more firmly, with that, especially with that scoop. Can you feel that glute get a little bit more active? After 10, we're going to switch, do the same thing on the other side. So again, both legs are straight together. One foot knee is bending, foot is going flat to the floor, and then moving that foot out to about 45 degrees. That foot can turn out lightly, keeping it relatively underneath the knee. Inhale, allowing that belly to lift. Spine comes off the floor. Exhale, belly buttons pushing that spine towards the floor as we now scoop that tailbone up towards the ceiling, planting through that foot. Inhale, let the hip drop back down to the floor, drawing that belly up. Exhale, navel to spine. How much can you scoop that tailbone up towards the ceiling? Can you feel that stretch on the front of the hip? Can you feel that tightening and contraction on the glute? And I don't want to squeeze the glute intentionally. I want to scoop the tailbone up, planting through a solid foot, and feel the glute get tight naturally. If you are intentionally squeezing the glute, that probably means you're not actually getting pelvic scoop. You're not actually tilting that pelvis. And we need to play with that range of motion of hip extension. The more extended that hip is with that pelvis scooping into it, going into basically what's called a posterior pelvic tilt, the more activation we're going to get in that glute, the more those glute muscle fibers are shortening and contracting. And it's a positional thing. I want to make sure that we have access to the position and we have access to that contraction in that position. All right, once we get 10 on each side, we're going to go ahead and pull out our chair. placing our legs on top of the chair, making our big C shapes with our hands. We're going to do 5 to 6 crocodile breaths, then we're going to do 5 to 6 turtle breaths. So again, thumbs are in the back, index fingers in the rear, or in the front, sorry. Palms are pressing into the side body. Want to be below the ribs and above the hip bones in that nice meaty section of the wall, abdominal wall. And we are inhaling, inflating that balloon in through the nose, exhale through the mouth, drawing that navel all the way into the spine. Feel that belly button press the spine into the floor. And with each inhale, see if you can expand that abdominal wall a little bit wider. Once we get 5 to 6 breaths, we can release our hands, opening up those knees so that they're shoulder width apart. Feet are still staying in contact. Hands are pressing into the knees, extending the elbows fully, and then actively pulling the knees into the hands in order to create that abdominal tension. And we're doing the same crocodile breath. Inhale. Feel that expansion through that abdominal wall in all directions. Exhale, draw the navel into the spine. On your next exhale, we're going to do a light Kegel and squeeze. And on the inhale, we're allowing that breath to move into the pelvic floor and release that Kegel. I want to continue to feel that expansion of the abdominal wall on the inhale, as well as that breath moving down into the pelvic floor. On the exhale, we're doing a contraction. We're squeezing the pelvic floor in our Kegel. We're also feeling that belly button pressing into the floor. So it's a significant amount of tightening and tensioning of the abdominals and the pelvic floor on the exhale. Inhale is feeling that breath move in and create length and stretch. After 5 to 6, let's let your hands soften and relax to the floor. I want you to take 5 or 6 just nice, soothing breaths. Nice inhale, full exhale. This is a good chance to kind of let that breath move up into the chest, into the shoulders, into the neck. On the inhale, on the exhale, start to feel all the tension in your head, shoulders, neck, back, release down to the floor. So on your inhale, we're breathing into tension. And on your exhale, we're letting that tension release to the floor. And when you're ready, we'll very slowly sit up. Make sure you're not dizzy or lightheaded before you come to before you stand back up.